Happy Sunday, everybody. I'm a couple minutes late getting going, but it is going to be worth the wait. I promise you that. Now, one of the things that I seem to keep forgetting to do is making sure that we aren't disturbed today or every day. So just hang on. There we go. Do not disturb. Now we don't have to worry about any noise coming through. I'm hoping. So, do we have audio? Yes, we have audio. Do we have video? We have video. And do we have ice cream? No, not yet, but we will before we're done today. So, if you have never joined me before, thank you so much for taking time to be with me live or watch the video after the fact. I appreciate it either way. Now, we are headed towards a treat that was one of my absolute favorites when I was a kid, and so we're going to get going right away. Now, the first thing that you have to do for ice cream is make a base and get out your ice cream machine. No, you don't have an ice cream machine? That's okay, because today we are going to make an ice cream that does not require a churn. Yes, I am not even kidding you. It does not require a churn. So, let's get busy. Now, we have lots of things. Where are we here? We have lots of things that we need to get together today. Now, the first thing that I really want to show you guys today is, and I hope you have a hot cup of coffee with you because I definitely do. The first thing that we're going to do is talk about the coconut, sugar-free coconut Da Vinci syrup that I have in my coffee. When it gets to be summertime in my brain, I need coconut in my coffee for a week or two. So that's what I've got in here. So good morning, Mom. That is absolutely delicious. Okay, so here we are. We have all kinds of things all over the place. And the very first thing that we are going to do is we are going to start steeping. Now, this is 250 milliliters of macadamia nut milk. Now, this is something that I get at Costco. It's called Milkadamia. And I really enjoy this. I like it better than coconut milk, almond milk, any of the other milks, and it is definitely keto friendly. The only issue with the macadamia nut milk is that it is also low fat, which you wouldn't think when it's made from macadamia nuts, but it is what it is. Now, I've left about half a cup in here, so you can see about half a cup there, and I will show you why. Now, we're going to start this on low heat because we don't want to get that going too hot too fast. Okay, now we have 5 egg yolks. Now, the egg yolks are a stabilizer. It's one of 2 stabilizers we're going to use in our ice cream. So it thickens it and it stops it from doing all kinds of weird stuff. So, ice cream really is very much a science, and it's a science that I'm anxious to learn about. And I've been doing some reading, and I'm going to be doing a lot more. And then coming up with my own recipes that are keto friendly, because most ice cream, not so much. Okay, so 5 egg yolks in the bowl, and we are going to whip those egg yolks. Now, I'm being nice to you today. I'm doing this with a whisk rather than a mixer for 2 reasons. First of all, we're going to need the mixer a little later. Second of all, it's not a bad idea for me not to make as much noise as a mixer does, because you're going to have to listen to that for a couple of minutes later on probably. Okay, so you beat this until these are beautiful and creamy, and they start to kind of thicken a little bit, and that's important. Now, when you're working with egg yolks, whether you're making ice cream or hollandaise sauce, whatever you're doing, 2 things are true. First of all, the egg yolks need to at least be pasteurized. So if you put your eggs into a bowl of water that's about 140 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. Look that up, make sure you know. But if you do that and you pasteurize your eggs, it's not going to cook them, but it is going to make them safe to use raw. So if you don't think you're going to get them to that temperature, because you don't know where they've come from, you don't know the barn that they've come from. Now you can see these are starting to change color. Let me get over here where you can actually see what's going on. Now the thing that we want to avoid when we're doing this is we want to make sure, see, I've got all of these ingredients here that are going to become clear later on. You want to make sure that when we add this to the ice cream base, that it's not going to be an ice cream base with scrambled eggs in it. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do is add the 1/2 cup of macadamia nut milk that we reserved. Now that's going to water down the egg yolks a little bit, and it's going to make it easier for us to temper them. And we're just going to add the 2 teaspoons. And I know that sounds like a lot, but just go with me on this. 2 teaspoons of vanilla can go in here right now as well. And we're going to turn this up so that it heats up a little bit faster now that we're ready for it. And to this, we are going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now, the other thing that we need to get going here right away is this is, how much did I put in here? 1/3 cup of water. And we're going to bloom 6 grams, which is about 1/2 tablespoon, of bovine gelatin. And this is Great Lakes gelatin. I really like this brand. It really is lovely and smooth. Now this needs to bloom. And you'll know when it is bloomed because it gets thick and you can see the gelatinous, but it'll look kind of grainy. So gelatin can't just be used straight out of the package. That's why when you make Jell-O, you add a cup of boiling water, and that gelatin has already been bloomed. So you add a cup of boiling water and dissolve it, and then you add the cold water to cool it down. So if you only used cold water, you would get this grainy effect. After it's bloomed, you need to cook it to make it smooth and satiny and lovely the way Jell-O is. Now this isn't going to be Jell-O, but what this does is it helps stabilize your ice cream. So it's going to help prevent ice crystals from forming. And this is boiling away now. Okay, so now we're going to give this a bit of a stir. Now this is important, and this needs to be done correctly if you don't want scrambled eggs in your ice cream. Oh, we're going to turn this off for a bit. You have to just pour a little bit in here and mix that up. Now what we're doing is we're raising the temperature of the eggs. And by raising the temperature of the egg yolks that we have in here, just a little bit at a time, we're making sure that they're incorporated into the macadamia nut milk that we're using. Now I've got about half of the milk that we've used. So this has raised the temperature enough that I can put this back on the burner. I know this seems like a lot of work. Watch the video again. Write the steps down. It is worth the work because you are going to have the most beautiful French vanilla ice cream. Now there are a lot of ice cream combinations that you can make with this. Now that we've got this part done, I'm going to just pour it back in the pot. Make sure that we get all of this yumminess. Now the egg yolks are a thickener and a stabilizer, but okay, let's get rid of some of our dishes here. I don't have a production crew here today, so it's just us hanging out. So I hope you guys are having fun with this. I know I am. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to bring it up to a boil, and when our gelatin has bloomed, we're going to add this, and the gelatin is going to work with the egg yolks to help set our ice cream base, because we want to be able to make an ice cream that doesn't need an ice cream churn or an ice cream machine. And I'm lucky enough that I have one, but you know, more than once I've thought I'm going to make some ice cream and realize that I don't have the bowl for the ice cream churn in the freezer, and it needs to be in the freezer for, you know, 24 to 48 hours to make sure it's good and cold. Okay, so we've got this, and you can look at our gelatin. You can tell it's gotten all kind of lumpy and bumpy, and that is not the texture that we want for our ice cream. We want this to be nice and silky smooth, and it won't be unless we put it in here and heat it up with the rest of our ingredients. Now, you've probably noticed that at this point there's no sugar in our ice cream. Well, that's because we don't use sugar, we're keto, but there's also no sweetener in our ice cream. So we've got 500 milliliters. Now you've got to keep stirring this, because even though we've tempered these egg yolks, you can't just trust that they're not going to scramble in there. We've got 500 milliliters of macadamia nut. We've got 5 egg yolks. We've got 1 gram or a quarter teaspoon of salt, and we're adding 110 grams of powdered erythritol. Now, you can use granular erythritol if you want, but granular erythritol, it'll work. It will definitely work. What you have to remember with granular erythritol is that it takes a while to dissolve, and you have to get the liquid really hot. It won't dissolve in cold liquid. And after it's dissolved, when you cool it, it's going to, this will do it as well, powdered or doesn't matter. It's going to make, hi AK, I'm glad to see you could be here. And I just totally lost my train of thought. ADHD brain. Poof, there we go. It's going to make little crystals in there. Now, if you don't mind the crystals, they are amazing little sweet surprises. It's one of the things that I really love about my sweet chili sauce that I make and take to markets, which, by the way, I need to make another batch of. But if you don't want that, once you have this cooled, you can use an immersion blender and just blend it up again. It'll break up those crystals, and then you won't have to worry about it. Now, we want to make sure that this is heated up to the point where those eggs, what we're doing is we're making almost like a custard. Now, the one other thing that we're going to add in here, and if you don't have this at home, don't worry about it. I am lucky enough that I do have it for one of my other products that I make. So we are going to add, yeah, that's a quarter of a teaspoon. Oh, can you hear that? You hear it making funny noises? That means it's getting thicker. Now, this is a teaspoon, and I only want half a teaspoon. So we're going to guesstimate, because this part of it doesn't matter so much. Now, this is vanilla bean powder, and it is lovely, and it adds some extra vanilla flavor. Do a taste test when you're doing this. If the vanilla flavor in this is not strong enough for you, you can definitely add a little more vanilla, but please, please use real vanilla. Don't use the vanilla flavoring. That stuff is not good for you. So everything that we are using in here, including the gelatin stabilizer, is all natural foods, and it's all keto. So even though you have a beautiful, sweet, creamy ice cream base, there we go. You don't have to worry about getting kicked out of keto, because there's nothing in here that's high carb at all. There's almost no carbs in this ice cream. Now, that does not mean that you can sit down and eat the whole batch. It means that you need to be a little bit careful. Now, we're cooking this until it starts to coat the back of a spoon. And it's not yet, so we're going to keep cooking it down. Now, while we're doing that, we're going to make a little bit of noise, because the other thing that we're going to need for our ice cream, now after we get this cooked, it's going to go in the fridge and cool, and you want it to cool for probably at least 6 to 10 hours, because you also want it to thicken almost as much as it wants to. Okay, set this down. The other thing that we're going to make today is we are going to make some whipped cream. Now the whipped cream, we're also adding vanilla to, but I'm not putting vanilla bean powder in. We're just making sure, because we know how sweet this is, and taste it. I think you're going to find that it's very, very sweet, but that doesn't mean that it's too sweet, because we're going to be folding in our whipped cream. So this is 1 cup or 250 mils of heavy whipping cream. And you want to make sure that it is ice cold so that it whips properly. Now, often when people make whipped cream, they add cream of tartar to it, and we are not doing that this time, because it doesn't matter as much whether this is going to, let's give this a whip again. Now, you really have to watch this and keep stirring. Now, let's see if I can do a two-handed ice cream adventure. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, now, the other things that we are going to add to our whipped cream is 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 15 grams of powdered erythritol. Now, in this, it is very important that, we're going to turn this down again. We don't want this to boil, we just want it to cook. Now, if something happens that you do end up with some scrambled eggs in your ice cream base, stop as soon as you see that there's any scrambling going on. And you can see that this is nice and silky still. So that's exactly what we're going for. Not quite done yet, but it's getting there. But if you see that you have a little bit of a scramble starting to happen, get that immersion blender in there, because that's going to just break it up and make it silky smooth again. So same as you would for the crystals from the erythritol. Well, you know what? Cream of tartar helps stabilize your whipped cream. So if you add about 1/4 teaspoon to a cup of whipping cream, it's going to make those whipped cream peaks a little bit firmer. You don't have to do it, but you'll see a lot of recipes that call for it. And if your whipped cream is going to sit in the fridge for any length of time, it does give it a little bit more stability. So that is something if you're making it ahead of time. But if you haven't used it, it is not something that you absolutely need. And if you're using just pure cream, then I would keep doing that. If it's worked for you up till now, then it's worked for you up till now. You know, the one thing, and I tell you guys this all the time, your kitchen is your kitchen. And so I can tell you how I do things. That doesn't make it a rule, and it doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. Okay, now, let's make a little bit of noise. We're going to turn this on high, and we're going to get this cream whipped. Now, I know this is noisy, guys, and I do apologize for that. Now, we're going to add the vanilla in. And we're going to add, now this is not sifted and it doesn't matter because it's going to be blended in here, 15 grams of powdered erythritol. See the erythritol dust? Okay, so that is whipping. Look at me being two-handed in the kitchen here. And we're going to turn this up. Wait until it starts getting thicker before you turn it up too much. That way you have less splatters to do. Now, I actually have a whipped cream bowl with a guard on it, and I do not have a good reason why I'm not using it today. I just didn't think of it until right now. Okay. Now you can see this is starting to whip already. Now this is something that you can do later on, because this is something that we're not going to need right away, because we have to chill our ice cream base first. So I'm going to have some whipped cream splatters to clean up later. Now you want to be careful with your whipped cream, because if you whip it too much, you're going to have whipped butter instead of whipped cream. Now you want it to be fairly stiff, because this is something that we're going to fold in to our ice cream base. Look at that, we are getting there. Now I'm just going to check and see. Nope, not quite yet. Not quite, almost. Now again, this is something that you can taste, but you don't want to make it too sweet, because the majority of our sweetener is in our base. There we go. I think we got it. Yep, that's it. We got it. Okay, look at that, and the noise is gone. And the noise is gone. And more dishes to do. I end up with so many dishes doing this with you guys, and it is worth every one that I have to wash. So there's that. Now let's check our ice cream base and see. Now it is coating the back of that spoon quite nicely. So we are, now it's a little bit different. If I was using cream or whole milk in this, it would coat a little bit differently. But this, because it's macadamia nut milk, it doesn't act quite the same way. It also doesn't have anywhere near the carbs. So this whole batch that we've done here so far, if you sat down and ate the entire batch of this, you would get about 8 grams of net carbs. I know, not too shabby, right? Okay, now this is done. And so this is going to have to go in the fridge to cool. This is going to have to go in the fridge to wait for that to be cooled. So, in the meantime, do you guys, are you from Alberta? Do you remember Ed Whalen? In the meantime and in between times. Stampede Wrestling, when I was a little kid. There was 500 milliliters, or 2 cups, of macadamia nut milk. Now you can use almond or coconut, whatever you have in the house. If you're using coconut though, keep in mind that the fat content is going to be a little bit different, and it's also going to give a coconut flavor. Now in our house, that's not something that I'm going to do, because I know that my husband is really not a fan of coconut. So that being said, he really does like my coconut macaroons. So there's that. Okay, now I want you to check this out. See how wiggly jiggly this is? Okay. Now this is not fully set, but it is getting there. Now look at what we've got going on here. Okay, so this is our ice cream base that has been, well, it was refrigerated and it wasn't quite where I needed it to be, so I threw it in the freezer for a few minutes. But this is what's going to happen if you put it in your fridge. Now, to this, now this is for the recipe that we made today, so I'm going to set that aside. But I have our whipped cream right here. And all we're doing with this, we're going to whip this up first and make sure that there's no lumps in here. I'm just going to borrow this. So you want to run your whisk through this a little bit and make sure, even though it's mostly set, there are no lumps in it. Okay, now that we have that done, we are just going to fold our whipped cream into this, and then you have a bowl of ice cream in whatever container you put it in, that is ready to go in the freezer. And in a couple of hours, it will be ice cream. So we're just going to put this in here. Now, you do not want to whip this in. This is really important. If you whip this in, okay, so a couple of things to note. Part of the reason that this whipped cream works is because when you whip it, you're whipping air bubbles into it, okay? So we want to make sure that those air bubbles stay in there, because that is what is going to give the ice cream its texture and what our ice crystals are going to form around. So you want to very gently fold it in. Now, if you have pasteurized eggs, and it might give you a little bit of an eggy flavor in your ice cream, but okay, I'm going to say this for those of you that are not keto, that are wanting low fat, you can definitely, instead of using whipped cream, you can try using egg whites that are whipped into a meringue, as long as you've pasteurized them, because we're not going to be cooking this afterwards. Now look at how thick and creamy this is. Now you can see a couple of spots where there's some whipped cream, and I'm not even going to worry about that, because this is going to make an absolutely delicious low carb keto ice cream that you can enjoy with your entire family. Now I'm going to take a little taste of this, see what kind of a job we've done. Oh my heavens. You definitely want to do this at home. Now, we are going to put this in the fridge, or in the freezer rather, and get it cooling. And then I want to talk to you about a product that you can find at your local grocery stores, and some health food stores carry it. And it'll give you, oh, look at that. That is amazing. Okay, I'm going to put this in a different container a little later, but for right now, in the freezer it goes, because in a little while, when that's frozen, I am going to take one scoop, and I'm going to take a can of orange flavored Zevia, and it's naturally flavored. Naturally flavored always makes me kind of go, I don't know about that. But Zevia is the only diet soda that I know of that uses stevia. Now, the first time you taste it, that stevia may not be your favorite flavor, but give it a chance. Take a couple of swallows, because with this keto version of Orange Crush, and I need to get a couple of them in the fridge, I am going to have an orange float. And that was one of my favorite treats when I was a kid. And when it's a hot summer day and you're outside playing and your mom brings you an orange float, the day just cannot get better. So even though we're keto, it does not mean that we can't have things that we loved from before. It's about finding a new healthy way to have it. Now, one of the complaints that I hear about ice cream quite often, homemade ice cream, is that when you make ice cream at home, it leaves kind of a fatty coating on the top of your mouth. This one is not going to do that. And part of the reason that happens when you're making ice cream at home is because of the science of ice cream. And this has got the right balance of fat and stabilizers and all the fun stuff that we talked about. So I'm going to read this out to you again so that you can have it written down. 500 mils of macadamia nut or almond milk or coconut milk. We've got 5 egg yolks, 110 grams of erythritol, 1 gram or a quarter teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and if you have it, half a teaspoon of vanilla powder. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. You can add another teaspoon of vanilla if you want, but I don't think you're going to miss it. So that's the ice cream base. Now remember, it's so important that you temper those egg yolks before they go in the pot. Otherwise, you end up with a pot of vanilla scrambled eggs, which, there are worse things in the world to happen, but it's not going to make good ice cream. You want 6 grams of gelatin. You need to remember to bloom it in cold water. And if you put it in cold water the night before, you can bloom it in your fridge overnight. So you can do part of this the night before, and then you're good to go. That bloom gelatin is also going to get added to your ice cream base, and then you're going to do your whipping cream. Now I'm going to give you a hint. If you have any of the flavors of Da Vinci flavored syrup at home, and I will show you in a little while. This is gelatin that is bloomed in raspberry syrup, and I am going to be making some raspberry ice cream. So I'm going to have vanilla, and I'm going to have raspberry, and I'm going to have a nut butter ice cream with chocolate chips in it. So there are all kinds of things you can do. Use your imagination. Go crazy, but stay keto, stay healthy, and thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you giving your time to be here with me. Please do your very best to live your best version of this shining life. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make some more ice cream, and I'm going to have an orange float a little bit later. I hope you do too. Have a great rest of your weekend and a wonderful week. If you are looking for me this week, you can find me on Monday at the Ponoka Community Market in Central Alberta. Wednesday, I'm in Wetaskiwin. Thursday, I'm in Lacombe. And Saturday, I will be in Rimbey. I will have Da Vinci syrups, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So come and join me. Have an amazing week, and I will see you